The existing system, this is the ones I'm sure 90% of you are going to use. It's your personal details, the A1 and A2 form, and I'm going to go through those in a little bit more detail. And that one asks all the details from you. It's then a summary of your training, of your period. Of the last 30 years you've already been working, what you've done, where you've been, and it's just jot notes. And then these training and experience reports, A2/1, 2.1. That's the one where you say, in this particular period, I worked at this company, and during this, I did this and this and this, and this is how I met the requirements. And then there's a confidential referee report, the project design report that you require, certified copies of your documents, particularly transcripts for the technologists, because you can become a technologist in cooking without a single engineering subject. And that's a problem, so we need to make sure. And a lot of them, particularly BTEC in project management, is not an engineering BTEC. You can have 1 or 2 project management subjects, yeah, but it's got to have a minimum of 5 to 6 engineering subjects in it. And then your proof of membership and that type of stuff. The technologists, you'll find is basically the same. There's only one difference. They want 3 referee reports instead of 2. And definitely a transcript of your subjects. And we'll look at the forms just now. And then the technician, you'll see the same 3 referee reports again. And they want a certified copy of the qualification, your experience reports, and that type of stuff. 2,000 word project that you've done. Right. The ECSA professional, this is for the professional engineer. They've got to make a 15-minute presentation. And that's where you do it on your project report. And now this is where you can justify, I did this, I planned this, I did that, I did this type of stuff. And what you're trying to find out, did he require a professional environment? Did he develop exercising judgment? Did he accept a level of technical knowledge? I'm going to leave these with you, so I don't want to spend a lot of time. Technical competence, can he analyze engineering problems? The contract knowledge, the general conditions of contract, FIDIC, NEC, these are different. As I said, ESCOM uses NEC, FIDIC is pretty much in the civil industry. And then financial awareness, again, there is other cost of resources, how it's managed, how cost of a job is built up, overheads and fixed costs and salary costs and contingencies and that type of stuff. And then the safety awareness, again, Occupational Health and Safety Act and the Environment Conservation Act. And lastly, but not leastly, is the professionalism. You're expected to know, not know, but have read their ECSA Code of Conduct and what's the most important things in it. And as I said earlier, the most important to me, besides the ethics and your responsibility to that, is that you will not do something for which you are not qualified. And the whole basis of registration is based on that.
In those situations, are you given a scenario to analyze, or are you asked to give?
No, they'll have a chat. It depends on what you've written. If you've written about it in your document and it's not, other than that, they'll just ask you, tell me, what do you know about the Health and Safety Act? What's important in it? That type of stuff. Project management experience again, and that again in your research, in your master's or your PhD, you had to project manage yourself. You had to set deadlines, you had to set timelines, you had Gantt charts, you did all the type of thing that you've got in project management. You can demonstrate it there. Right, common report problems, lack of technical application of technical knowledge, and this is where I'm going to be very controversial and say, just a guy who's just lecturing and does nothing else. What technical knowledge is he, particularly if he's lecturing simple first year stuff. He's not demonstrating technical knowledge at all. This is where you need that. And particularly in the civil environment, we find this more so than anything. Not so much on the lecturing side, but I'm talking about an industry side. Particularly a guy who does contracting most of the time. He virtually has no technical stuff. It's always kicking butt and that type of stuff. Lack of professional appreciation. Again, that's the contracts and the ECSA Code of Conduct and stuff like that. Over-specialisation, very narrow view. In other words, we had that from one of the big companies where they were using engineers properly, but what they did is they put them in little boxes and all they did is plan. Or they sat in another little box, investigation. They just did investigations, but they never actually went and did anything. They didn't go and complete it. They just did a very small part of it. And you get it quite often in civil companies where the guy only does structures, he does nothing else. And particularly for, that's not too bad for a technologist and a technician, but for an engineer, he must get experience in some of those sub-disciplines. Poor organisation of thoughts displayed in the report. You know, you read the report and you know what the guy's saying. That's very important. And poor communication. Can't communicate at all. And we have quite a few. We had a guy, one guy who was so bad we couldn't even detect what he was trying to tell us. So we rejected the guy and sent him on a communication course. Guy came back and he registered late. So all of these you can overcome. Poor English writing, now that's a bit of a problem, particularly for our foreign friends and some of the new South Africans who come from some of the distant areas. Their English is not good. Unfortunately, it's the world language. It's quite interesting, even in China and in India and in Korea and even in Russia today, a lot of the degrees now they write in English because it's become the world international language. Insufficient experience. Guys apply too early. Either apply too early or they haven't had the experience yet and they think they can waltz through it. Tips. Guys, the most important thing, are you selling yourself? Huh? You're selling yourself to a bunch of other peers. So please remember to write that and the most important thing is write in the first person. You know, at university you write they and it and that. Two words you never use is they and the other one is involved. What does it mean? It's standing with your hands in your pockets watching people. I did, I planned, I assisted. Write in the first person and say what you did. Detail what you've done, not what the company. We had one guy report this thick and 90% of it was all what Eskom did and one little bit at the bottom I worked at Eskom. Gives us absolutely nothing. Because your forms are going to go to 8 or 9 people and they're going to go through it and if they can't understand what you're doing, there's a problem. Describe what you've done and indicate your level of responsibility. Were you responsible for it? I was a fall guy. I designed that and I planned it and I did it. And my supervisor just came and checked it afterwards. That's fine. But not we. The royal we is a terrible word to use. We designed. Now, who actually did the design? Very, very important. And don't generalize. Waffle, as I said, about the company. And you don't have to write pages and pages, eh? A couple of paragraphs can describe what you've done in that period. Synthesizing it down. And all periods must be covered. Ladies, if you could take maternity leave, please write it. Guys, if in old days those who went off the army, or if you take a year sabbatical and you go touring around the world, just put it in, because you might have been in jail, you see, and then we can't register you. And we need to know that. Right. Come on. That's what I wanted to cover in the basic presentation. Are there any questions on that now, before we get on to the more detailed stuff?
The submission of what you're talking about will be assessed whilst you are a candidate or before you even become a candidate?
You don't have to become a candidate. You don't have to become a candidate. You can go direct. What we're saying is a young person that's graduating now, become a candidate because you get all these details up front and one of them says get a mentor who's going to help you. So for young people it's advisable, particularly in industry, to register. But you don't have to register. You can apply for registration direct if you've got the experience. Okay?
Is that determined by age or qualification?
How young is young? How young is young?
Well, I'm talking about the guy that got 3 years out of 1 year out of what, got his degree 1 year ago. Okay, yes? Sorry, I can't hear.
How long does it take?
How
How
long?
long the whole period takes? The process take.
Man, if all the ducks in a row, 3 months. And I mean by the ducks in a row, if the application comes in, ECSA works on a 3-month cycle. So if it comes in at the beginning of it, in that 3-month cycle, the chances of it getting in that 3 months is more likely 6 months. But if it comes in and all the documents are there, the money, and nothing happens until the money's paid, until all the documents are signed. One of the biggest problems we get is referees don't send their documents in. You give it to a referee and say, please write it for me, and he chucks it in his in tray, and 3 months later it's still sitting in his in tray. So my advice is take it to the guy and say, please fill it in, he has an envelope, seal it, and post it straight away. That's the best way of doing it, but that's one of the biggest problems. But generally, if all the ducks are right, 3 months, 3 to 6 months, basically. The foreign ones takes a bit longer because it's got to go through, and that they meet monthly, but as I said, the piles are this high to go through them. And if there's something missing, then it takes, if the transcripts are not there, or copies of the projects are not there, then you've got to get those in first before you can do it.
Are the subjects which are non-exit level subjects also considered as an experience?
You mean for lecturing? Yeah.
As an experience towards
that
non-exit level subjects?
Yeah, it doesn't have to only be exit level. It's just that, as I said, when compulsory registration comes in, then you will not be allowed to lecture exit level subjects if you haven't registered. But that doesn't apply now.
For the references, how many normally you recommend?
3. Technologists, technicians 3, engineers 2. Okay. What was on the program next? Yes?
Saying why? Why 2 for engineers and 3 for technologists?
Because the technologists and technicians are being difficult. No. It's different groups of people. It's different groups of people.
And the referees must be registered as well or not?
In most cases, they're not even registered actually.
If they're not registered, or they're not even.
What?
If that person was.
Then you need to find somebody who is registered in the company or in the what you want. The engineers, one must be registered and one will accept. Not if one's registered, the other one, if they registered somewhere else or something like that, will accept them.
So there's something about if you graduated some years ago, you only need the last 5 years.
The last
What is
5, if you more than 10 years ago,
Oh.
then the last 5 years in detail, and the others can be in jot notes. Just small paragraphs. Yes, sir.
I'm talking about the sponsors. You said they must be registered, right? If they are in another country, registered with other professional bodies.
We'll accept that. Yeah. For example, the Institute of Engineers in Nigeria, if he's registered with those, or Mauritius or something like that. Okay? Right. What I would like to do now, if we can, is just let's get out of this. Come on. This one doesn't want to know my troubles.
The whole thing is jammed.
Ah, that's better. Okay. What I'd like to do before we go on is the education evaluation. This is the application form for education evaluation. You'll notice it's very similar. We need your name, title, country, nationality, all your details. And then you want your educational institution, where, qualification, the date of your final exams, if you've been employed and stuff like that. That's the basic form, okay? They've asked now for verification of authenticity of the qualifications, because we've been getting a lot that are coming in that are not. And then you're required to fill in some information sheets. Come on.
So we're talking current employment.
Yeah. Where is this thing now?
Go to the bottom word.
Now you'll see all your education, your basic, we've made room for 3. If you've got more than 3, give us the details. And we're asking you to give us this type of info. In your project, how many were in the team? Were you on your own or were there 6 of you in the team? And one of the problems we find quite often is there's 6 in a team on the project, and then you ask the guy what did he do? Well, we all did it. So what was your response? Well, we were all the same, and then we have a problem. Also, who proposed your project? Did you propose it? Or did your supervisor, or did you get it from industry or something? How was the project classified? Was it a discrete little project or did it cover a wide area? And we ask you to give us this information. How much time did you spend on the project? 10 hours or 300 hours? Just a guesstimate. And then how were your courses assessed? Did you have a course dedicated to design? Or how did you learn design? Did you pick it up in a whole lot of different courses? Because you know, design is a language. It's a philosophy. You've got to do this, you've got to do that. Where did you learn that? Was it in a particular course or did you pick up in a whole lot of different courses? How are your courses assessed? Does it include lab work? Does it include projects, assignments, tests and exam? If it is, how much? Usually the exam is 70% and 30% goes to the others. Okay, we ask you to give us this detail because it speeds things up. Were there external examiners? Did you have an external examiner on the exit level subjects that made sure that it was right? Now we had one university and in this country said, what do we want external examiner? We know we're right. But it's good quality control. It's a quality system. It's not that the university is bad. Is there somebody making sure that it's right? What happens when a student fails? I was explaining just now, there's one country I visited, you require 50% to pass the semester. So you can get one subject with 90% and fail all the others and you still pass the semester. In fact, one degree I looked at, he'd failed 19 subjects, were never repeated. He got a degree. Also, no project. How many students in your group when you started? 20, 30, 500? How many were in there when you finished? You find a lot of overseas universities, the good ones, 25 started and 25 finished, or 24 finished. Maybe only one fall out. In South Africa, we have about a 20% success rate. Give you some idea. Sorry?
So you'll have to fill this for every qualification you have? You'll have to fill it for every qualification, first degrees, masters and a PhD or what?
Well, yeah, because most of it applies to your first degree, because a master's that you don't have really examined unless it's subject. If it's subjects you are, then give us it. It doesn't take long. But it makes it much quicker for us to analyse it if you give us this. You see, then it means quite often you don't even have to go in for an interview because we can analyse it like that. And then again, what is a typical number of years to finish your degree? How many lectures were there? What were their qualifications? Go to one university and they're all bachelors. They haven't even got a single master's there. Now you start worrying. I mentioned Stanford. They only got 12 professors. Total staff is 12 professors. But they've only got 100 undergrads. The rest are all postgrad. What was the spread of your lectures qualification? What laboratory facilities do you have? Just there. You know, we had 6 labs, electronics lab. Then we said, what equipment was it? It was fully equipped, wasn't it? What type of lab was it done? Was it totally procedural? You walked in there, you were given a sheet, put your meter on there, put your meter on there and measure. Or was it non-procedural? Particularly in the final year, did you say that they want you to measure the torque curves of a motor? Go and do it. Work out your own process and your own procedure and pick the right instruments to do it. Just to check.
The University of Johannesburg. Rethink, reinvent.